Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Who have we got on tonight? We have Vladimir Putin. Point of the usual, please, Sue. Great to have you on, Vlad. I thought you'd be busy, preparing for something, but it's great to see you on the stream. We have Killer. Great to have you on, Killer. Hope you're well tonight. Thanks for modding. We have Enzo the God. Great to see you, Enzo. Hope you're fine. Gene T, great to see you. Raven 1983 Witch, great to have you on too. Pete, great to see you, Pete. Misty Hill, great to have you on. Deck, great to see you. We have Pete. I said hello to Pete already. Ewan, great to see you. Tricky Dick, great to have you on. Okoj de la Bevier, great to see you. We also have Lenan, great to have you on. Buxton, great to see you too. Zoe Castles, great to have you on. Hope you're well tonight. We have Duke, great to see you. Ruth, Eddie, Colin, Chatty Rat, Audrey, great to see you, Audrey. Hope you're fine. We have Red October, Catherine Jones, great to see you. Xavier, who else? W&G Fan, great to see you. Catherine Magister, we also have Katrina, great to see you. Dr. Johan, great to have you on. Hope you're well. The Highlander, Never Dies, great to see you. And so many more. Tiny Demolition Lover, I see you there. Great to have you on. Martha too. Hope you're all very well tonight. And big hello to everyone who I missed. What we're up to 234 viewers, so I can't say hello to everyone, unfortunately. But we have a super chat from Valerio. Thanks so much, Valerio. Hope you're fine. Thanks for that. Hi, Max. Do you think Boris is really able to get away from all the scandals and still be in power for long? I'm starting to worry now. Yes, to be worried now. I agree. I posted on Twitter, I think it was, that it's Monday we say okay, he's in trouble. Tuesday he's definitely going. Wednesday any moment now, and then Thursday arrives and we're like maybe not so. Maybe he'll survive this week. Then Friday it moves further away from the idea that he's going to resign. Then Saturday it's almost like he's Teflon again. Then Sunday some scandal breaks. Then Monday we're talking about the same thing. So it just goes over and starts at the beginning of the week. We're pretty sure he's going to resign. By the end of the week he seems safe, and it's been repeating that way for the last number of months almost. And I don't know what to say at this stage, because reports are meant to come out. I'll read a bit about that tonight. Reports are coming out from Sue Gray's office, allegedly, and Boris Johnson is going to get an advance of it, and then he has to read it out, or it's going to be released. So I was talking in one of the videos how it would be just the findings. And that was the education secretary, I think it was, who said, look, she's going to release the findings, not the report. It seems that he's actually going to, or she's going to release the report. So that's a little bit different. We'd actually get a better sorry, I had a bit of a sneeze there, so I didn't want to blow your eardrums off, blow your eardrums out. So I muted myself for a second. That hasn't happened before. So it depends on when this report is going to drop, and whether it will actually be the full report or just the findings. Because I'm afraid that what's going to happen is just the findings are going to be published, and Johnson will be let off the hook. But what's strange about all of this is that Dr. Johan, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Hope you're well tonight. Stay safe. What's weird about all of this is that the Metropolitan Police wouldn't investigate. Then when Sue Gray was close to releasing her report, the Metropolitan Police decided, yeah, we're going to investigate now. And they put a delay on Sue Gray releasing her report. And now it seems that she's going to release her report. So I have no idea what's going on here. Thanks to both of you. Remember, guys, if you want to hit me with a super chat, I will read it out during the stream. I'm just doing a refresh here because there's some interesting, this is from The Guardian, some interesting stories popping up. And, you know, a lot of these things are happening just as we're speaking. This was an interesting clip. I might do a video on it tomorrow, but just want to show it to you. It's very funny. What a pile of crap. You organize a party. You even said that there was a cake. But you can't say it wasn't organized. Like, where did the cake come from? Did somebody just pull it out of their behind? Like, cakes don't grow on trees. They didn't fall from one of the trees in the garden. Somebody went out. Somebody ordered a cake. Probably had Boris Johnson's name written on it. Like, these things require time. I'm not saying it has to be done. It needs weeks or months or something like that. But at least a day to plan this. Ambushed with a cake. He was, in a sense, ambushed with a cake. Is this guy trying to suggest that Boris Johnson was not responsible here, it was somebody else? But even if Boris Johnson was not responsible, even if it was a surprise birthday party, the people who organised it should be in trouble. Isn't it interesting how much detail this guy knows, even though he wasn't there? He said at the beginning of this clip, I wasn't there. I heard it from other people. So he knows a lot of detail, even though he was not there. And he's able to speak from almost from a position of authority that nothing really happened here. Wow. So it doesn't matter if he broke the rules. It doesn't matter if he's lied to Parliament. It doesn't matter if he has broken the law. We have to defend him because he's our leader. The dear leader must be protected. To hell with my constituents. To hell with the country. To hell with democracy. To hell with the rule of law. To hell with the idea that a government should try to act with a bit of leadership for the country, should put the nation first. To hell with all of that. We have to defend the leader. Yeah, well, I think people have already realized what you can do in government. You can do whatever the hell you want in government and get away with it. How are you making lives better? By breaking the rules. By allowing the leader to break the rules and not get punished. Insane. Oh, we have a super chat from number 3. No sound. Oh no. Oh my god, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Let me play it again. Apologies for that. Could you please replay the video with there was no sound? Apology, I'm not sure what happened. Maybe it was a Twitter problem.
This latest party wasn't just a bit of cake in the office, was it? It was a party.
Well, you can characterise these things in different ways. My understanding of that, from what I know of it, and I know as much as you do or your viewers at home know, the Prime Minister was out on visits. He came back, he was working in the Cabinet Room. People came in, presented him with a cake on his birthday, they sang happy birthday, he was there for about 10 minutes. It was not a premeditated, organised party.
Okay, so I'll repeat what I was saying before. He's saying it was not a premeditated party. Obviously it was. Somebody ordered a cake, somebody made a cake. That takes time.
In that sense. that the Prime Minister himself decided to have sent out. Well, he, as far as I can see, he was, in a sense, ambushed with a cake.
He's even laughing himself. It's all a joke. He was ambushed with a cake. So he's trying to paint this picture of Boris Johnson, working hard. After a long, hard day, comes down to the wherever it was, the basement maybe, so that people can't see it from the outside, as you do. When you're not trying to hide anything, you go down to the basement, and they had birthday hats. They had a table laid out. They had a cake prepared, and Boris Johnson was, "Oh my goodness. You shouldn't have. You really shouldn't have, because this would be breaking the rules." Does anyone honestly believe that happened?
They came to his office with a cake. They sang happy birthday. He was there for 10 minutes. I don't think most people look...
So, as I said before, he knows a lot of detail, even though he wasn't there. Sack the cake. The cake will be thrown under the bus. That's what will happen.
At that at home.
Lee says, was it a work cake? Oh, well, of course. Like work wine and work cheese. There's work cakes as well.
Would characterise that as a party.
It was it was a long, hard day of telling lies. It takes a lot out of him,
I mean, ambushed with a cake. It's just sort of farcical, isn't it? The way you're all trying to scurry around and defend him.
He's our leader.
As I said, he's our leader. So we'll do whatever it takes to defend him. We'll throw the country under the bus. We'll throw 150,000 people under the bus. We have to protect the leader. The dear leader must be protected at all costs. We support him, no matter what he does. It's almost a bit like Donald Trump on Fifth Avenue, Shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, wouldn't lose a voter. Boris Johnson throws 150,000 people under a bus, and he's still supported by sycophants like this.
I support him. I want him to continue as Prime Minister. I want him to show the British people what we can do in government to make their lives and their communities better.
By breaking the law, by breaking the rules, by writing the rules and then throwing those rules in the bin when they come to you. By telling the public you need to follow the rules, and then going, within minutes, going and breaking those rules. Like Boris Johnson clapping for NHS workers, frontline staff, and then going back inside and having a glass of wine and some cheese. Boris Johnson and other members of the cabinet telling people you need to follow the rules. It's very important. And then going and having a party. Let them eat cake, Alexander. Yes. Well, let them eat cake on their own time.
Of course we want to draw a line under this, and that's why we want the Sue Gray report to come forward as soon as she is ready. We want the Met to get on with looking at whatever they're looking at, and then to make their findings public, and then the public ultimately will judge.
I don't know. Boris Johnson should have resigned a long time ago. And I think he's going to weasel his way out of this as well. Thanks, Alexander, for that super chat. It says here there's an update. Boris Johnson prepares to face possibly his most difficult day in politics. Tory MPs say his fate is hanging in the balance. But is it really hanging in the balance? That's the thing. We've been here before. We've heard how, yes, this is his judgment day. And then after, it dies down and then something else comes along. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. Will the police now investigate all criminal activity in high office? What's interesting is how the head of the Metropolitan Police is investigating now. But will it be a real investigation? She's saying that she's going to investigate, but she dismissed evidence in the past. I don't think they're going to investigate. Now, what's interesting is also in her speech, she said that probably fines will not be laid down. So this is basically just about Boris Johnson, I think, because others who were attending these parties, these work events, they will not get punished. I think that's what I read into it, that anyone who is attending will not be receiving a fine. So the only real scope of this is to determine whether Boris Johnson has broken the law. Now, if he's broken the law, he has to resign. This is not about misleading Parliament. This is breaking the law. And he's the Prime Minister, so he has to resign. You can't have a Prime Minister in in Parliament who has broken the law. He's not Silvio Berlusconi, okay? Thanks once again, number 3. I don't know where else we can go with this, because it's just getting worse and worse. Now, I want to read this tweet from Robert Preston, who says, breaking, this is about an hour ago, I have an important clarification from a source close to Sue Gray that there is no separate summary distinct from the full report. What Gray will give to the Prime Minister will be her report into Partygate, her findings, and her understanding with the Prime Minister is he will publish that report in full, with no cuts, no censorship, no redactions, and he will publish just a few hours after receiving the report. Publish after lunch if sent in the morning, sort of thing. This is what she expects. The report has not yet gone to the Prime Minister, but it could go to him at any time. As I said earlier, I expect the report to be very difficult reading for him. Gray obviously accumulated vast amounts of evidence that she will publish. Those who attended the parties will judge whether her report is fair and accurate. I think this is interesting as well. So how will the Tories react to this? Okay. How will the Tories react to this? I think some of them will say, oh, she has been in cahoots with the Labour Party, or her report is not truly independent, or I don't know. You're going to have some people who will dismiss her level of impartiality, and then others will say there's nothing really to see here. But we'll have to wait. It's like a minefield of cake. Where is Guy Fawkes when you need him? Yes. Stephen Harrison, that's terrible. Okay. So a little bit more about the Partygate inquiry.
Well, Mark, it looks as if we might not have to be waiting too long until that report is published. Could be hours, could be a couple of days, but we're getting the sense that it might be relatively imminent. But here at Sky News, we can give you a little taster of one of the things that's gone into that report. I understand that officials who work in government have been handing over photographs of what they think of as parties going on in Downing Street to the Sue Gray report. There are images sent to Sue Gray of events inside Downing Street said to feature Boris Johnson, according to two sources. They have told me that those images show both Boris Johnson and bottles of wine and people close together. Evidence, I suspect, that will be used both in the report by Sue Gray and now passed to the police to form part of the Metropolitan Police inquiry into whether COVID laws were broken. So this is quite an interesting development tonight. We don't know whether those pictures will be published as part of the report, but we understand that they're circulating. So brace yourself for images of Boris Johnson, bottles of wine and people packed close together as those images have been handed over to Sue Gray.
Will any of it have to be censored in the sense of decency? Like how much wine was consumed when Boris Johnson was there? So just to continue on this, and then I'm going to move on to another topic, of course, because until we have more information about what Sue Gray has actually in her report, a lot of it is just really speculation.
Do you accept that laws have been broken?
No, I don't accept that, because I don't want to preempt an inquiry.
So you're saying that the laws have not been broken? You just say, I don't know if laws have been broken or not.
Believe in justice. I don't believe in trial by media. So what I want to do is see the outcome of the inquiry, both Sue Gray and both the police investigation, and then we can make decisions and move forward from there.
Well, I don't think this is trial by media. I mean, certain facts have been established, haven't they? Certainly with June the 19th, it's not denied there was a gathering. It's not denied there was a birthday cake.
Boris Johnson apologised. How can you say we need to wait for the report if Boris Johnson has apologised? Boris Johnson said, I should have sent people back inside. Now, he claims it was a work event, but there was wine and cheese on the table. But then he apologised. How can you say we need to wait for the... We don't know, we can't make any assumptions? Yes, because we have the evidence there. It's more how many parties took place, how many times Boris Johnson was there, and to what extent he broke the rules. He broke the rules. So greywash.
Happy birthday was sung. A number of people gathered when no more than 2 should meet inside unless it was, quote, a work event and reasonably necessary that the work event took place. So are you saying that was a reasonably necessary work event?
What I'm saying is that at the moment, the Prime Minister does not believe that any rules have been broken by himself, and I want to see the outcome.
He said he didn't know. He wasn't told that he was breaking the rules. He didn't know if he was breaking the rules. Not he didn't break any rules. He said he hasn't come out and said, I haven't broken any rules. Well, not recently anyway.
Of that inquiry, so we can get to the details and find what has happened. People are unhappy, and quite rightly so, through all these allegations coming out. But it's only right that we see the outcome of that report and then make decisions from there. And I don't want to preempt anything, and put together an outcome that I don't fully know. So let's wait for that inquiry and make a decision from there.
I wonder what he's going to say when the inquiry delivers its report. Okay, and it says here that cake and singing on Prime Minister's birthday was not a party, says Grant Shapps. So the Prime Minister's gathering with birthday cake in a cabinet room was not a party. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, or whatever his name is, Michael Green, I think he has another name, Michael Green as well, has said, denying the Prime Minister had organised the event. The Prime Minister clearly didn't organise to be given a cake. Well, we don't know that. You're presuming that's the case. Shapps told Sky News after the latest revelations about lockdown breaches in Downing Street, some people came forward and I thought it would be appropriate. Some people came forward and thought it would be appropriate for him, on his birthday. Why would they think that? Did somebody go individually and give him a cake? No, it was a group of people, so they were breaking the rules. They were not supposed to meet in that way. They wrote the rules, remember. It's not somebody, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know we were breaking the rules. No, you wrote the rules. You're supposed to set the standard. You're supposed to set an example. But he also suggested it was unwise for the Prime Minister having been given the cake at the gathering of staff. He told BBC Radio 4 Today programme that he shares the sense of unease about all of this. Unease, yes. Can you imagine for a moment if the shoe was on the other foot? Imagine that Jeremy Corbyn had a birthday party and members of staff had come to celebrate. What do you think the Tories would be saying now? Would they be saying we need to wait for all the evidence to come out? Of course they wouldn't. They'd be saying he should have been sacked ages ago. He should have resigned. The Queen should have sacked him. They would have been tearing down Parliament if Jeremy Corbyn had been in charge, or Keir Starmer for that matter. Shapps confirmed that the event on the 19th of June 2020 would be considered by the official inquiry into the breaches by Sue Gray, saying that she was already aware of this particular incident, so she would be using that in her report, and we'll see what she says. He says the gathering revealed by ITV News which was attended by the Prime Minister's wife Carrie, the interior designer Louis Little. Why was the interior designer at this? It's not a member of Boris Johnson's family. You know, if it was just his family, which is still breaking the rules, wouldn't be as bad. But his bloody interior designer was with staff the Prime Minister had been working with all day, and will have been many a time in the same room with them working. So he's trying to say, well, this is a bit like working. You know, yes, they had a party, but it's like working. It's like a meeting, but just with a cake. And you know what the worst thing about this is that some people will buy it. Some people, not everyone, most people will not, but some people will buy it. They say, well, I guess if they've been working all day, what difference does a cake make? And they'll get away with it. I don't see this cake business really sticking, because they've convinced the public that there's nothing to see here. Remember when they used the word spill out? Well, people were working together and then they spilled out onto the garden. Well, you know, and that's still a work area. So there's nothing really to see here. And unfortunately, many members of the public buy it. They say, oh yeah, okay, I guess so. Yeah, I guess working outside and working inside, maybe they weren't really working, but they're already together. What difference did that really make? These are people who follow the rules. These are people who maybe were not able to be near a loved one at the last moment, and they're willing to buy this Kool-Aid from Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson does not care about these people. Boris Johnson doesn't care about anyone but himself, and they're going to buy this crap. So let's move on. And let me read some more of your comments before we continue. It wasn't an interior designer, it was a technology lesson. It was technology lessons. This has been going on for years. Conspired Max. I hope during the COVID times it was coffee cake. Follow the crumbs, Helen. Thanks so much for that super chat, Helen. Yes, follow the crumbs. They all lead to Boris Johnson. Thanks for that. Can they provide any evidence of work actually being done in those places? No, of course not. Like, you know, if you're working, if you said, okay, let's say for the sake of argument, you were allowed to work outside. Okay, you're allowed to do these certain things. Then wouldn't you have had a whiteboard outside? Wouldn't you have had a laptop or a tablet or something like that? But there was nothing like that. They were sitting in the garden with wine and cheese, relaxing. Some of them were sitting on the grass, having a chat. They were not working. Robert, thanks so much for that super chat. The Tories are masters in delaying tactics at the moment. Yeah, it all seems to be about, okay, let's buy more time. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to wear the public down. They're hoping that, okay, with the thanks again for that super chat. And I think you're right here. They're trying to wear the public down. People, and you've heard from people like I think it was Edward Lee and maybe even Jacob Rees-Mogg, who said, look, people just want to move on. So they're trying to convince the public, we have to move on, we need to move on from this. And they're hoping that the public will buy that as well, and that we just have to move on. Because if they move on, then they're going to be able to return to normal. They want to take this issue off the table and attack the Labour Party, for example, over something else. That's what Boris Johnson is hoping will happen. He wants to get back to talking about the rollout of the vaccine and how it's the first in the world and stuff like that. He wants to go back to the way things were before, where this is no longer a distraction. But I think the damage has been done. They may be able to stop some of the rot, but trust has been lost, and it's very difficult to regain that. And this is, another issue that's probably damaging Boris Johnson as well. So it says here, top Tory warns Boris Johnson votes will evaporate over national insurance hike. So what the Chancellor was trying to do recently is is planning to increase national insurance contributions in April, which are going to disproportionately affect people on the lower end of the scale, the lower end of the economic scale. The poorer and the working class and the poor were going to suffer the real hit here. If you're earning above a certain level, you're not going to be impacted. And it's not you're going to be impacted less. In some cases, you're not going to be impacted at all, because the way national insurance contributions work is they cut off at a certain period. So it's not like income tax, where the more you earn, the more you pay. No, national insurance has a limit, and once you go over that, you don't pay anymore. So if national insurance contributions rise by a certain percentage, everyone gets hit, but the poor, people on lower incomes, get hit worse than the rich. That's why it would have been much more egalitarian to impose a tax increase, an income tax increase. Again, it would be better if it was a progressive tax, where the people who earn more pay more as well, not just pay more as part of their salary, but pay a higher rate, because they're able to take the hit much better. Somebody on a lower income, if you take off 5%, it can have a much bigger impact on them than if you take off 5% of a millionaire. The millionaire pays more in real terms, but the impact on them is much smaller. Dr. Johan, thanks so much for that super chat. Game theory, change goals, posts, do it infinitely. Yes, it's all about moving the goalpost, as you say. This is the target today. Let's move it over here, and then the public focus on something else, and they stop focusing on the original position of the goalpost. And unfortunately, without critical thinking skills, we all get caught by that. We think, we should be talking about this today. Thanks for that super chat. Boris Johnson. So it says here, Boris Johnson looks set to ahead. With a manifesto bursting national insurance hike, despite a warning that Tory votes will evaporate. So Tory former cabinet minister David Davis, our good friend David Davis, urged Mr. Johnson, to scrap a 1.5% point increase in national insurance in April, which will heap misery on families facing growing cost of living crisis. Yes, because we're seeing what's happening also in April is that the cap on fuel is going to be lifted. And this means more and more people are going to fall into a position where they have to pay more for their fuel. They're not going to be protected. Fewer people are going to be protected. Opposition is mounting among top Tories to tax hikes to fund national health and social care, with one minister claiming the entire cabinet opposed the idea. Commons leader Jacob Rees-Mogg is said to have called for the move to be abandoned, while former Brexit minister Lord Frost boasted the idea when he quit his role last year. The manifesto-breaking tax rise is confirmed last September to tackle COVID backlogs in NHS and to fund social care. Mr. Davis told the BBC, at the last election, one of the things that came up on every doorstep when I went to all the northern seats around me was Jeremy Corbyn putting taxes up. Therefore, I'm going to vote for you. And what are we going to do now? What are we going to do? Put up taxes. What do you think is going to happen? Those votes, they're going to evaporate. So for our own political interest, but more importantly for the national interest, Yes, we should keep taxes down. Mr. Davis, former Brexit secretary, last week called on Johnson to quit following the row over Downing Street parties. Anthony C, thanks so much for that super chat. I feared Boris wants a wag the tail distraction, like also known as Ukraine conflict, and rally round the flag. It's a possibility, but I don't know if that would work, because it's not like the United States where there's a huge amount of support for war in general. And I don't see people really rallying around the flag like in the United States. It's possible. It could be a useful distraction, but this isn't the Falklands. This isn't British territory that's been affected, been invaded here. And it's also a difficult position for the Conservative Party because they receive a lot of money from very, very rich Russian people. So I don't think he could try something like that, but I don't see it really sticking, because you're not fighting an enemy that's attempting to take land from you. So I think there's a big difference here between, of course, there's a difference between most conflicts, but in particular, what helped Margaret Thatcher back in the early 1980s was the Falklands War. I don't see this happening with Boris Johnson. It doesn't really have the same ring to it. And I don't think there's a huge amount of support for a long drawn-out conflict in Ukraine, in Europe, or in the United Kingdom. Thanks for that super chat. Sebi, thanks so much for that super chat as well. He'll be out after the local elections, no sooner. Yeah, the trust has gone, and it's very difficult to get that back. And with the local elections coming in a couple of months' time, it's going to be a bloodbath for the Conservative Party. They're going to lose a massive number of seats all over the place. And Boris Johnson, if he's still in his position, he will resign straight after. The party will kick him out. He won't be able to stay. They say he needs to step aside and allow someone else to take over. I don't think he'll survive that long, but then I've said that before. I really thought, once Brexit is starting to bite, as it has, I thought he would go, because I actually thought people would complain. I thought the public would be angry over the impact of Brexit. I thought fishermen, farmers, people who generally vote Conservative, I thought they would be angry, and we haven't heard a peep from them. The biggest protest I saw from farmers against Brexit or against the Conservative Party were a few tractors driving through a small town on a Saturday afternoon, when the office was the constituency office was probably closed. That's all I saw. And a few lorries. Yes, there were a few lorries that drove down to London, drove around Whitehall for a bit, and then went away. That's, if you want to know how to protest, you need to go to Paris, or to at least go to France. Zero Trooper, great to see you on. Richard Turner, thanks so much for that super chat. If Johnson upsets Putin, Sue Gray will never never need to release her report, as we won't even exist anymore. Small island doesn't tell Russia what to do, for sure. Yeah, and talking of small, thanks so much for that super chat. Talking about small islands, there's a bit of a small battle taking place between the Russian Navy and Irish fishing boats, a few hundred miles off the Irish coast, because the Russian Navy are doing testing, weapons testing, it seems, or drills or something out there, and the Irish government aren't too happy about it. But the Ireland doesn't have a navy. Okay, they have a few Coast Guard vessels, I think maybe 3 or 4 of them, but it doesn't have any real military might. It doesn't have any real navy at all. And they have no way of standing up to the Russian Navy, even just this single destroyer or whatever that is out in the Irish Sea. But the the fishermen seem to be willing to cause some problems. Anyway, guys, we're almost halfway through the stream, so before we move on, we'll see our funny video. But I want to cover another story before we continue. Let me see. When we're talking about maybe Tories turning on Boris Johnson, well, another Tory has turned on Boris Johnson again. This is Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. He's not too happy with Boris Johnson at the moment, and Boris Johnson isn't too happy with him. So let's see what he has to say about what's happening at the moment.
Acting quite decisively over the last couple of weeks. I've been speaking to colleagues. I was down in the House of Commons yesterday, and more colleagues are becoming frustrated by this constant drip of more allegations and more revelations about parties in Downing Street.
How much damage is that doing to the Tories and potentially to the country?
Well, it's clearly damaging when these investigations are taking place, when the Commissioner of the Met Police announces an investigation within Downing Street, this ongoing inquiry by Sue Gray. The whole thing is very damaging, and that's why I think we need clarity. But I've also said I've regretfully come to the position that the Prime Minister can't continue.
You probably are not speaking directly with him anymore, but if you did have a word in his ear today, what would you say?
Well, I say he has done a lot of good for this country. The vaccine rollout has been extremely successful in the United Kingdom because of the decisions he and his government took. The support that we've seen here in Scotland and across the UK during the COVID pandemic are as a result of decisions he and his government took. But I also believe he can no longer continue to instill confidence across the country, given what people have decided has happened with the information that we all have available at the moment.
I said this before, the Scottish Conservatives have no love for Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is a liability to them and they want him out. It's not so much that they care about Boris Johnson breaking rules or anything like that. I don't think Douglas Ross gives a crap about following the rules. It's about him damaging Scottish Tories. Scottish Tories want him out. They want him replaced with somebody maybe a bit more friendly to Scottish Tories, Michael Gove maybe, or Rishi Sunak. But Boris Johnson is a liability. He has to go. I don't actually think Rishi Sunak would be very popular in Scotland. I don't think Michael Gove would be, but they would be slightly less toxic than Boris Johnson. And the longer he stays there, the more damaging it is to the Scottish Conservatives. And with elections coming up, I don't know if there are local elections in Scotland. Perhaps they should be, I think. The Tories are going to lose seats there as well. Because as long as Boris Johnson stays there, the public view him as the leader of the party. They don't view Douglas Ross as the leader. They view Boris Johnson as the leader. Gareth MacDonald, thanks so much for that super chat. Ukraine. Or is it Sugrain? Ukraine, Sugrain. Damn it, Max, now I'm confused. Maybe there is no Sugray. maybe she never existed. But it is interesting how I love this sort of drama that's playing out between the Scottish Conservatives and their brethren in Westminster, because we've seen Jacob Rees-Mogg call this guy a lightweight. This guy called Boris Johnson for him to resign, and it'd be nice to be a fly on a wall when a meeting is taking place, because I presume they are still having some meetings because they're basically the same party. So it's a branch manager, not a party leader here. Yeah, it's a branch. This is a guy who I was covering in one of the videos about Northern Ireland where there was double jobbing. This guy has almost half the job. There is no unemployment in Scotland because this guy has half the jobs in Scotland. He's an MP. He's a member of the Scottish Parliament. He's a linesman. I don't know what else he does. I don't know. Does he grow haggises in his spare time or something? I don't know. He has a haggis farm. I don't know. An inside joke there. But of course, there's no unemployment. He has half the jobs, and of course he's getting. I presume he's on a number of salaries here. And then when he resigns or retires, he'll be on 3 jobs max. Three jobs maximum or 3 jobs max? When he retires, he'd be probably on 3 pensions. So that's quite lucrative. So guys, we're almost halfway through the stream, so I'll just just link to our funny video for today, the first one, and then we'll get back to the serious stuff in just a moment.
So if 30 people did sing happy birthday to the Prime Minister, that's just because they were all washing their hands at the same time. The Cabinet Room has a very large sink. I believe it's where Margaret Thatcher used to wash her hair, and David Cameron washed his pigs. As the newly appointed Minister for Inquiries, it looks like you're going to have your hands full. Indeed, we have a lot of things to look into. Breaking lockdown regulations, Islamophobia, fraud, 2 inquiries into Michael Fabricant. 2 inquiries? Yes, one into what he said on TV, and the other into his hair. Where are you getting the budget for all this? Well, we've replaced the Department for International Development, so it's fine. Didn't even have to change the letterhead. So you're the Department for Inquiries and Diversions. And can you guarantee that these inquiries are independent? Yes, I have a crack team of clones of Sue Gray who will ferret out all wrongdoing and report directly to the Prime Minister. But what if the wrongdoing was committed by the Prime Minister himself? Well, surely if the Prime Minister does it, that means it's not wrongdoing. That sounded a bit like something Richard Nixon might have said. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you really comparing Boris Johnson to the disgraced former president? No, and don't put words in my mouth. Anyway, I must go. I've just been informed that Nadine Dorris has sent a tweet, so no doubt we're going to have to set up another inquiry. Thank you, Minister. What a prick. What was that? What? What? Did you just call me a prick? I didn't know the mic was still on. So you're admitting you called me a prick? Well, that's a very serious allegation, and to show you how seriously I'm taking it, I'm going to set up an inquiry. But it happened just now on live TV? I'm afraid we'll have to wait for the results of the inquiry. I can show you the tape. I don't want to prejudge any possible investigation. Look, what a prick. Well, look, it's important to remember the context. What context? I've been working very hard, it's quite early in the morning, and a lot of people do think you're a prick. But as I say, I have to wait for the results of the inquiry before I can say any more. And now I really must go. Thank you, Minister. Results are in.
Wonderful. Okay, let's move on. Liz Truss, Brexit and Liz Truss. Liz Truss faces backlash on Australian trip over plans to hike UK taxes on wine from down under. Wait a minute, no, that can't be true. Wasn't it all about reducing the price of wine? So it says here, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is facing a backlash from Australian wine producers during her trip down under amid complaints that any benefits from a post-Brexit trade deal will be more than wiped out by the proposed changes to UK taxes on alcohol. Wait a minute, are you acting just... does this mean that post-Brexit Britain is engaged in some sort of protectionist racket? Industry lobby group Australia Grape and Wine estimates that the tax hike will cost an additional £70 million, adding 40p to the price of every £5 bottle of the country's drink bought by the British consumers. This compares to a forecast £26 million gain from the trade deal. Okay, so it's going to add. So they're going to gain 26 million, but it's going to cost 70 million. The review of excise duties on alcohol has been hailed by Boris Johnson as a key benefit of Brexit. Okay, but is branded unworkable by the UK drinks trade because it will generate vast amounts of extra red tape as well as forcing up the price of some of Britain's most popular brands. So it doesn't seem to be anyone's actually winning here. I thought maybe this is some sort of shrewd Brexit move by Brexit Wonder Woman and Boris Johnson, but it doesn't seem to be the case actually. Under plans set out by Chancellor Rishi Sunak to deal with due to take effect in February 2023, a single tax rate for most wines will be replaced by a sliding scale with 13 brands of duty levied against according to strength, with 14 more brands for fortified wines. Because of the country's sunshine, Australian wines tend to clock in at a higher end of the strength scale, with alcohol by volume levels of 13% or more. Under Mr. Sunak's plan, any wines over 11.5% of alcohol per volume will incur more tax. So when Liz Truss said we're going to sign this wonderful trade deal so you can have cheaper wine, you're not going to... Yes, the wine will be cheaper, but then we're going to put a tax on it. Okay. Did they think this true? You're telling people a benefit of Brexit is you're going to have cheaper wine, but before you get the cheaper wine, we're going to put a tax on it. Ms Truss was challenged on the scheme during her current visit to Australia to promote trade and defence links with. This is not good. This is not going to go down well in Australia, because they're going to say, okay, well, if you're going to do this to us, then we're going to do something in return, in retaliation. That's not it's not a good way to start a trading relationship. The ink is still not dry yet on this trade deal, and you're already putting a fly in the ointment, or a black fly in the Chardonnay. Australian Grape and Wine Chief Executive Tony Bataling, I'm not sure how to say that, said it is unfortunate that the result of the free trade agreement will be directly impacted by this tax. We are hoping that they will look at and come to a better solution. At the moment, it's very concerning. This will discriminate against red wine imports. We estimate it will add 40p to the price of a bottle. And, they were talking about reducing a bottle of wine by 9p. So they're reducing it by 9 and adding an extra 40. And that's a lot when you're talking about a wine that is £5. A spokesperson for the Treasury Wine Estates, producing the top-selling brands such as Wolf Bass, Penfolds and Liedemans, said the proposed new alcohol duty system in the UK will significantly impact Australian wine industry and increase costs for UK consumers. Well, we understand it will wipe out the £26 million benefit for Australian wine growers agreed upon in the recent UK-Australia Free Trade Agreement, replacing it with $70 million of costs and diminished future growth prospects in the largest export market for Australian wine growers and UK consumers. Of course, this is something outside the trade deal. Which is, so how do we put this down? Do we put this down as incompetence or slyness? I don't know which. probably the former. It's like, oh damn, we have this tax. Oh crap, we should have actually checked first. The new duty could add up to 40 pence to a bottle of Australian wine for UK consumers. The pressure group Wine Drinkers UK, which is campaigning for Mr. Sunak to ditch his plans, said that the sunshine tax will also impact wines from Australia, from New Zealand, South Africa, California, and Argentina, where warm weather naturally translates into higher alcohol content in wines. You're actually going to help wines in Europe instead, because they tend to have a lower percentage of alcohol, lower alcoholic volume. So by signing a trade deal with Australia, if I understand this right, was supposed to say, look at post-Brexit Britain, we are reaching out beyond Europe, and then you're going to put a tax on stuff coming in. Okay, of course, this is just one product, but Australian wine is very popular in the UK. This doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's like there's no communication taking place between the Department of International Trade and the Treasury. But I think that's been going on for some time. Homebrew may remove the need for suitcase. I've heard Aussie wine is pretty good. New Zealand wine is good at least. I thought it said cake, not coke. Yeah, but it's just no good, Max. I hear Baby Sham is 2% alcohol. Depends on the Baby Sham. So, once again, I have no idea whether this is an oversight or it's just complete and utter incompetence. So I want to read this article from The Guardian as well about Brexiteers, and this is a very interesting article. I'm not going to read all of it, but it's just a summary of it. It says here, from Brexit ultras to net zero skeptics, what the Tory fanatics want. And it's a question that's always been on my mind. What are Brexiteers going to do? What are they going to move on to next? And some of them have moved on to the pandemic. Then when the pandemic is over, what are they going to move on to? They're probably going to move on to public debt, for example. That's a big thing as well. Something you see much with the Republicans in the United States. And you can sort of copy and paste the ideas from the Republican Party in the United States into the minds of the far right within the Conservative Party. The so-called lockdown skeptics or low taxation advocates. Singapore-on-Thames Brigade. So we have here, for example, Brexit hardman Steve Baker, the Brexit ultras, the likes of the ERG, and the lockdown opponents. So remember the COVID recovery group. These MPs have been cheered by an announcement on Wednesday of government plans to phase out more or less every remaining pandemic rule. So these people are in charge at the moment. These people, a real case of the tail wagging the dog. And I've talked about these before, how they're extremely dangerous and they act outside democracy, because the Prime Minister's party is elected to implement a manifesto. But then what happens is they meet someone like Steve Baker or one of these CRG people, and they say, well, if you want our vote, you need to give us something in return. And there's a type of horse trading taking place within the party, not between the party and the opposition in order to get something through Parliament. No, it's within the party itself by these people who were elected on a party manifesto, but they're there to push something else. And that's extremely worrying. Net zero skeptics, they used to be climate change deniers. Okay, these are people who don't want the country to take any measures to deal with climate change, and they use issues like, we need to reduce the cost of energy for ordinary working people or the poor or whatever, when in reality they don't give a crap about the poor or the working class. Those who came in in 2019, the culture warriors, again, is something copied from the United States. And if you look online, people such as Ben Shapiro or Tucker Carlson, these are the real big mouths in the United States. These are the real gobs on a stick, as James O'Brien calls it. These are ones pushing particular narratives, and they have a huge numbers of followers online and in the media generally, and they're generally someone listened to. They have a huge platform and they use it, and some of them are borderline fascist, some of them are just completely fascist, and they use issues like culture wars or pulling down statues or language, so-called censorship or cancel culture, things like this. They use these as tools to convince the public that this is a problem, while at the same time they're pushing through policies. The perfect example of this, and there is a crossover, Steve Baker, Brexit hardman Steve Baker, banging on about how, freedom is very important. We need to protect freedoms. He campaigned for Brexit, and he was very happy to see the freedom of movement taken away. That's one thing about it. That's the contradiction there. He presents himself as a libertarian. Then at the same time, he was demanding that there is voter ID brought in the UK. So you need to have ID when you go to vote in order to stop voter fraud. So he wants to take away people's right to vote, but sell them the idea that it's about security. It's about making sure that, it's protecting democracy. He talks about freedoms, about freedom not to wear a mask or freedom to when it comes to the vaccine or whatever. He talks about these things, and then he voted to take people's freedom of movement away and their right to protest. So, don't trust these people. These people are charlatans. They'll tell you one thing and they'll mean something else. And the dislikers, the final group is the most desperate, but is united by one thing. They have openly called for Johnson to step down. A handful such as Caroline Noakes are from the most obviously liberal wing of the party and have never had a huge amount of faith in Johnson. Others such as Andrew Bridgen are former supporters who become disillusioned. Their policy ask is very simple: that he quits. Okay, so these are people who just want Boris Johnson out. Who's going to replace Johnson and how they're going to deal with people like this, I don't know. It depends on how much of a majority the Conservatives have, or if they're kicked out. What's going to happen to people like Steve Baker? I think Steve Baker will lose a lot of his power when he's in opposition. And I hope people like Steve Baker are kicked out and we don't hear about them anymore. But unfortunately, I think we will. He'll be invited on to GB News or something like that as a commentator. Anyway, wanted to cover that, and let's move on. Ministers award £300,000 takeover intelligence contract to firm part owned by Tory MP. So a data intelligence firm partly owned by influential Tory backbencher has won a government contract to monitor foreign takeovers of British businesses under new laws to curb Chinese and Russian influence. So we need a company to monitor foreign takeovers of British companies, and let's hand the contract to one of our guys. Tom Dugganhat, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, is a shareholder in the Business Funding Research Limited, which in Business Funding Research Limited, which trades as Bewhurst. The Telegraph can reveal that the company has been awarded £308,000 contract for corporate screening services by the Investment Security Unit, a new organisation within the Department for Business. The ISU is the spearhead of the National Security and Investment Act, which came into force this month. It aims to investigate foreign investment and predatory takeovers in the UK from hostile powers, notably China and Russia, amid rising official concern that cutting-edge technology and economic influence are being lost. And these people are Brexiteers. Staying within Europe would have helped protect many of these industries. And the Tory party are in charge. The Tory party destroying the union, throwing businesses under a bus. And these are the people who say, yeah, we need to protect our industries. They would sell it off for half the price. They'd give it away for free. Something doesn't really fit with me on this. In his role as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, he was a leading voice calling for more scrutiny of foreign investments in debates that led to the establishment of the ISU. Publishing a report by the Foreign Affairs Select Committee last year on the planned legislation, Mr. Tugganhat, I think I'm pronouncing it right, Tugganhat, warned that there was a risk of the reporting system being overwhelmed. Look, I'm not criticizing the system. I'm not criticizing the idea of having some sort of monitoring. I think that's probably a good idea. There are probably companies who are, foreign companies who want to invest in Britain, maybe buy out a company. That's perfectly legal. But if it's a state-owned company, that could be a problem. But then it seems to be targeted just towards Chinese and Russian. there are a number of companies in the UK that are owned by, like for example, Nissan. The UK government gave them a lot of money to stay in Britain. Nissan is owned partly. No, it was not Nissan. It was another company that's owned by the French government. I don't remember. The French government have a stake in it. Not exactly the same thing, but once again, the problem here is not so much the software, or the idea, or a system, or a body involved in monitoring this. The problem is who won the contract. He has also intervened in takeovers, raising national security concerns. Before Christmas, Mr. Tugendhat wrote to the business secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, calling him to scrutinise the £5.4 billion takeover of the satellite operator Inmarsat by the American rival. Last year, he criticised the Chinese bid for a Welsh semiconductor manufacturer, Newport Wafer Fab. Mr. Tugendhat, who has been the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee since 2017 and declares his holding in Buhorst in the Commons Register of Financial Interests, did not respond to requests for comment. Look, you shouldn't have... Why shouldn't... I think an MP should renounce their investments. Okay, if I have investments in businesses, that's going to create a conflict of interest. Or I shouldn't be on a committee where I could benefit from that. He's on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and he's dealing with issues of foreign affairs. He has a business that has interest in foreign affairs, foreign companies. He shouldn't really be doing that. I don't think ministers should have interests in companies. You have a job. That's your job. Do your job. You should renounce these, and you should not have these connections. You shouldn't have money invested in private companies. You shouldn't be receiving dividends from private companies, because that creates a conflict of interest. It's okay for anyone to buy British companies unless they're Russian or Chinese. How lovely. The speed at which the Brits and Americans have been conditioned to hate these two countries is disturbing. Stop complaining. The evil, vile UK is breaking down. Nissan Bluebird, excellent motor in its day. I remember it, actually. What a name, Tugendhat. Tugend means virtue in German, and he wears it as a hat. Probably the cloaking device for really shady stuff that goes on. Tugen what? No, it's an obvious... Excuse me. No, it's an obvious conflict of interest. Divest. Tories Wiki. Check it out. See recent Standards Committee with Ian Ishop. He said no second payments for MPs. Yeah, I saw a clip of that today. I'll probably do a response video to it, and I think he's probably a hero of the week. Calling it out. Look, you have a job. Do your job. If it's not enough money, go and do something else. I know for some people it's not enough money. Okay, if it's not enough money, go and do something else. It's the majority of MPs do nothing. Okay, they don't. Ministers do something. Ministers have responsibility. Front benchers have responsibility, but backbench MPs, like Sir Edward Lee, what the heck does he do all day? He probably goes to his wife, or I don't know, whoever sends him to the House of Commons to get him out of the house. Otherwise he'd be shouting at the TV or writing letters to someone. Regan Ali, thanks so much for that super chat. The Metropolitan Police are speaking with Mr. Kipling in relation to the alleged cake ambush. He makes exceedingly good cakes. Yeah, so we'll have to keep Mr. Kipling on a tight leash. He needs to be He needs to be investigated by Sue Gray. Thanks so much for that. Very good. For those who don't know, Mr. Kipling makes cakes. Is a cake producer, Mr. Kipling, and I think the slogan was he makes exceedingly good cakes. Let me read some more of your comment. He'll just rip some wallpaper to pay the bills. for a free meal. Maybe. That's probably why he goes there. Practices turning beetroot. That takes time to perfect. I shout at the TV and email my MP. Okay. No, I mean in the the Edward Lead way would be like shouting "old man shouts at cloud" sort of thing. Okay, let's move on. Biden considers Ukraine options as Pentagon puts U.S. troops on heightened alert. This seems to be updating. So it says here recently. Whoops, let me get rid of this. Russia's aggressive build-up near Ukraine energized NATO into sending more forces to Eastern Europe on Monday and led to a plunge in Russian markets, raising the stakes on the Kremlin's bet that it could cajole, exhort and or force Ukraine into submission. For Moscow, it has become more important and more difficult to pull back from its aggressive stance after US and NATO announcements that more troops would be deployed to the military alliance's eastern flank. A unilateral withdrawal would now leave the Kremlin a clear loser in the standoff, having provoked a strengthening of the very NATO presence that it sought to banish from Eastern Europe. Moscow was blamed for the West for raising tensions and the chaos on Russian financial markets. We're observing statements published by the North Atlantic Alliance about the enlargement of the contingent and the deployment of forces and hardware to the eastern flank. All that leads to further escalation of tensions, claimed Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, on Monday. This is worrying for Russia because they've invested a huge amount of capital in this, and if unfortunately, and I really hope we don't go down this road, but unfortunately for Putin, if he pulls out now, it could be damaging for him at home. You know, why did you do this? NATO sent you packing in a sense, and he may have gone beyond the point of no return, where he can't pull back now. He has to do something, and I think it's very concerning for the people of Ukraine. Whether you agree or not with what's happening, it's extremely worrying for those people because they're in the middle of all of this. And I think what Putin had hoped would happen he would show lack of unity, disunity within both the European Union and NATO. And the opposite has pretty much happened. Yes, there are some countries in the European Union who are not supportive of action. Germany in particular, which is not interested in providing military support to Ukraine. But the European Union have said that they're going to provide financial support to Ukraine, and NATO are providing military support to Ukraine. So I think Putin maybe he was waiting too long. I think he was hoping to create chaos in Europe and in the West, and it hasn't worked out that way. And now he has to do something. If he pulls back, it'll be embarrassing, but if he goes in, it's going to be a nightmare. It is not their money they'll be giving out. It's to the public. Therefore, I think they'll see it as free money. Surprise parties still illegal. Having the government overthrow a fascist coup supported by the EU and US was probably worrying for Ukrainians. Look how the Brits trolled Germany. See, the problem was that people were pointing at Germany and saying, oh, why isn't Germany doing something? Germany is weak. Germany has a long history in Eastern Europe. Germany has a long history with Russia, and they don't want, they have been told for the last 80 years, do not be engaging in the east of Europe. Okay, look at what you've done in Eastern Europe, and for that reason, I think that's part of the reason why Germany does not want to get involved in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, with Russia, because of the history, and I think we should respect that. Okay, so I want to show you a clip not exactly related to that, but to Biden. This is quite funny.
I didn't realize.
So Joe Biden was taking questions from members of the press, and he had this to say about a Fox News reporter.
How restrictive some of this was. But you're going to make a difference in ordinary people's lives. Ordinary people's lives are going to make a difference. So anyway, Brian, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, could you give us a brief update on your call with European leaders on what's happening in Ukraine today?
The only reason I don't like doing this is you never report on why I've called a meeting. And this is really important. I had a very, very, very good meeting, total unanimity with all the European leaders. We'll talk about it later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Will you send troops to Ukraine, sir?
Why are you sending 8,500 troops to Ukraine, possibly?
Thank you, guys.
Will you take questions on inflation then?
Let's move.
So is there somebody calling? What do you think about inflation or something like that?
Thank you. Thank you
all. Do you
all.
think inflation is a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
What a stupid son of a bitch. You can't say that he's not being frank, okay? He's not being honest. Look, Fox News are there to kiss Donald Trump's arse, and they're there to try and tear down the Democrat. So whoever the Democratic president is, they're there just to ask stupid questions. When Donald Trump is there, like, Mr. President, how are you so wonderful? How do you get such a beautiful tan? Things like this. Why are the Democrats so crappy? Things like this. And he's like, yeah, stupid son of a bitch. It's typical Joe Biden. That's what you'd expect Joe Biden to say. I hope the guy didn't take it too personally. But, that's what you get. You're a Fox News reporter. It's not even news, okay? Just one other thing. Okay, yeah, we'll move on to this one instead. Just wanted to pop in with that. That was quite funny. So there is a real concern taking place now at the moment, because in the UK, in Britain, in England, I should say, the Health Secretary has set a deadline for members of medical staff to be fully vaccinated, and there's a risk that there will not be sufficient staff because many people have refused or are unable to get the vaccine, and there's going to be a staffing shortage, a staffing crisis even.
Deadline is looming. February the 3rd for frontline health and care workers to have had their first COVID vaccine dose. By April the 1st, they're expected to have had their second jab, the definition of fully vaccinated. But the Home Care Association is warning that if the government pursues this policy, up to 100,000 home care workers, the ones who go into a person's house, will leave. In a letter to the Health and Social Care Secretary, they say the government has seriously misjudged this balance of risk. We are deeply concerned that the safety and well-being of older and disabled people will be dangerously compromised by the loss of 15 to 20% of the home care workforce. And we believe that the risk of hospitalisation and death from COVID-19 among people receiving home care, particularly those who have been triple vaccinated, has been overstated and is unsupported by the evidence.
The sort of vibe of the message is, the pandemic is coming to an end. Some people might not agree with that, but that is the stance the government has taken. And therefore it seems inconsistent and incongruent, really, to start implementing complex regulations.
And this is the problem. Once again, the politics is getting in the way of policy. The policy is we need people to be vaccinated. We need frontline staff to be vaccinated. But the politics is Boris Johnson has to convince the public that he has got COVID done or something like that. That, yeah, everything has been sorted out. That's the problem. He's trying to convince the public of one thing, and reality on the other side is you have to, the staff need to be vaccinated. So by saying we're sort of over it, or Boris Johnson has defeated it, he's undermining his own government's attempts to get these staff jabbed. Because if they're not, they're going to be dealing with members of the public, elderly people, people who are either ill people as well, and they're going to be putting them at risk.
When you've more or less said the risk is much, much lower.
Last week, Channel 4 News fact-checked estimated that up to 52,000 frontline NHS staff could be redeployed or sacked under England's vaccine mandate. There are some who think this is a matter of who will blink first. The health and care staff who face losing their jobs, or the government. This is, after all, a sector with severe staff shortages. But today, the line from Number 10 remained that they will stick to those dates. That this...
And I'm on the side of the government here. But the problem here is that the government have underinvested in the health in the NHS and social care over the last 10 years, which has made it difficult to hold on to the staff. And now they're saying, well, the staff need to follow these rules, otherwise they're going to get sacked. It's very, very difficult.
Is a policy that needs to be brought in because it is about protecting society's most vulnerable.
Hello, good morning.
The Prime Minister visiting Milton Keynes Hospital today announced no more testing for arrivals in England for the double jabbed, and it will be the same in Scotland.
Although we have to be cautious, we are now moving through the Omicron wave, and you can see the figures are starting to get better. So what we're doing on travel, to show that this country is open for business, open for travellers, you will see changes so that people arriving no longer have to take tests if they've been vaccinated.
Infections, however, do remain high, more than 80,000 today, and most recent figures show cases in children aged 5 to 9 have almost doubled in a week.
Because the virus, particularly with the Omicron variant, is so common in the population, sure, we're seeing lots of children coming into hospital with something else who've been found to be positive. But my own personal experience, the experience of colleagues, and we've got routine, there's routinely acquired data but it isn't translating into admissions of children.
Next Sunday, it will be 2 years since the World Health Organization declared coronavirus a public health emergency of international concern. And today, the Director General warned it was dangerous to assume the pandemic was near the end.
There are different scenarios for how the pandemic could play out and how the acute phase could end. But it's dangerous to assume that Omicron will be the last variant or that we are in the end game. On the contrary, globally, the conditions are ideal for more variants to emerge.
Yay! Because we don't have enough people vaccinated. We in the West have very high levels of people vaccinated, but in poorer countries they don't. And we should be providing them with those extra vaccines. We should be providing them with the resources to implement those vaccination schemes. That's what we should be doing now. Even if out of selfishness, if necessary, to protect ourselves.
To change the course of the pandemic, we must change the conditions that are driving it.
But he said it was possible to end the acute stage this year with vaccines, testing and medicines.
What does that look like? It means achieving our target to vaccinate 70% of the population of every country with a focus on the most at-risk groups.
And yet there is a yawning gap between wealthier nations and countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, where just 0.2% of the population was fully vaccinated by mid-January.
0.2. That's what we're talking about.
That is a long way from the WHO's target.
And when he said that it could be done this year, I don't see it happening this year. If the Democratic Republic of Congo is looking at 0.2%. It needs to change, and we have the resources, we have the money. We need to spend it there. If not for the people there, as I said, do it for ourselves, because we're going to see more variants and we're going to see more restrictions and more lockdowns. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for all of your super chats. Thanks to all of you for all of your comments. Much appreciated. Let's keep an eye on what's happening with Boris Johnson and Sue Gray and her report. There may be some movement tomorrow, but it's hard to tell because I haven't seen anything. Let me see if there's anything updated here from The Guardian. This is from 24 minutes ago. I've heard that there's been a meeting of 30 Boris Johnson loyalist MPs tonight discussing what can be done to try and shore up support. Sounds like the shadow whipping operation. MPs have a WhatsApp group with over 100 Tories on it. They're getting their loyal MPs to try and persuade colleagues to get Johnson through this, arguing that he needs to be able to focus on the other issues on the table, Ukraine, cost of living, etc. But told even by the most loyal of to the Prime Minister that they believe it will be a massive uphill challenge to win back support of the country and party, including in Parliament, if, and that's a big if, he gets through this. One MP said that they felt it would need less a night of the long knives and more a week of the machete. Though others I speak to really dislike the language and really feel for officials, arguing the tone always set from the top. Cthulhu NC, thanks so much for that super chat. Stay safe, Max. Have some cake. I plan to. Thanks so much for that. So Boris Johnson his fate is in the hands of MPs. It always was. It always will be. They will decide whether he goes or not. And I think if there are more things coming out, more images, more videos, it's going to create more and more problems for them, and they may just bite the bullet and say, look, he has to go. We can't continue to defend this. Because birthday party, what will be next? Strippers? Is that what it will take for some of them to say, okay, he has to go? How do we defend that? He didn't know it was a strip club or something like that in number 10. We will see. So let's keep an eye on it tomorrow. Let's see him at number 10. See Boris Johnson at Prime Minister's questions tomorrow. See how he reacts, and see how the opposition deal with him. Cahill, thanks so much for that super chat. Why don't they threaten to cut funding to disloyal MPs, constituencies or something? I don't know if you're saying that as a joke. They have already tried that. But you need you don't want to piss off too many of them either, because they will turn on you. You know, the whips hold the whip, but if enough of them turn on the whips, then they're in trouble too. So thanks so much for that super chat. They may try some tactics, but you know, if there's support, if support for the country, sorry, for the party in the country is going down the toilet, no amount of whipping is going to fix that. So, you know, you end up going to make it worse for the entire party. And the whip's job is to protect the party. So if they see it as damaging to the party, they're going to get rid of Johnson. So let's keep an eye on it. Take care, guys. I'll see you on next Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. But before we finish, we have our one for the road. Just a moment, I pasted it in here. Thanks again to everyone who sent a super chat. Thanks to everyone who came on tonight and smashed the like button, and thanks to the moderators as well for doing a wonderful job.
Big Cressida here. Just to let you know that we've had to review our not going to investigate Downing Street, and we are now going to investigate Downing Street. To be honest, we tried to fucking stay out of this, but it turns out that, you know, people up and down the country were getting fixed penalty fines for having parties and what have you. So it can't be one rule for one and one rule for the other, and we're the police and we have to draw a line somewhere. And to be honest, I mean, there've been fucking parties every week. It's going to be hard to find out what day there wasn't a fucking party, if I'm honest to you. I mean, there was a cake, there was candles, there was drink, there was some bastard was bringing in drink in a suitcase. I mean, what do you want us to do? We can't turn a blind eye to this. The law's the law. So if it applies to everybody, it applies to Downing Street. So that's what we're doing. We are now going to stick to the letter.
Great to see Janie back once again. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Remember to stay safe, wear a mask, protect yourself, and I'll talk to anyone who's on Patreon. I'll see you after the stream tonight on Discord. We'll talk about this a bit further. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Take care. Good night.